I start whenever you want.
Alright, this is a tutorial on the Canon XSI. We're going to start with just quickly going over the beginner basic modes and then quickly switch over to the creative controls so that we can show you a more in-depth understanding of how to use this camera properly. I'm going to start off just by showing you the basic mode most people use. That's the full auto mode, which is indicated by the green square on the top control dial. Now when you're in this mode, you have no flexibility in terms of what's being captured by the camera. The camera chooses the autofocus for you, it chooses the picture style for you, it chooses the metering mode. It basically does everything. You know, you can't set the white balance, nothing can be changed. Everything is determined by the camera.
You're good.
Everything okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Additionally, with this, you cannot shoot in RAW mode. You're very limited in terms of your menu. You can't change the quality to RAW. There's very basic features. You cannot do exposure adjustments either. So when you take a photo using this mode, the camera will select for you the shutter speed that it thinks is appropriate. It will also choose the aperture, which it's saying 3.5.
Move the camera forward. Keep talking, move the camera forward. Right there.
Okay. It will select everything for you. It will use the flash if it needs to. It'll focus for you. This XSI has 9 focus points inside the display. So inside here, if you look, there's 9 different points. And the camera can use any of them to choose what the subject matter will be. Now, when you're shooting in full auto mode, it will select the item, the subject that is closest to the camera, even if this is not what your intended target is, and it will shoot that photo and focus on that item. So here we have a sample photo that was taken. And here's our result. If we wanted to have a shot of the chair in focus, that would be very difficult to do using this mode because the camera again will select what it wants to be in focus. We can then still see some more additional information such as all the different settings that the camera used. We can see that 1/60th of a second shutter speed was used with an aperture of 4.0. And we can see a histogram here which shows us our exposures of the shadows.
Just keep moving, because
shadows, midtones, and highlights. And then we used an ISO 400. Everything else is set for us. In this mode, you can't really control anything, like I said, and you know, it's for the most basic uses. It's if you have no idea what you're doing. There's other modes on top as well, such as portrait mode. Portrait mode changes the picture style that the camera is using. Again, you can't change any of the settings. It allows for continuous shooting, whereas in full auto, you can hold down the trigger and you get one shot. If you are using continuous shooting in portrait mode, you can hold it down and it'll take multiple photos. This is a little bit more flexibility than the full auto mode, but again, there's not a lot of settings that you can change in here. Another setting that you have on here is the sport setting. This changes the autofocus mode. Again, you can't change it back, but it puts the autofocus mode into a mode where it is constantly refocusing for you. As you're holding the button down, it will keep adjusting constantly. It will never blink red inside. The focus point will never become red to indicate that focus lock was achieved because focus constantly changes. Again, you'll also have the flexibility of having the multiple shots being taken using that mode. And that will usually be at the highest frame rate the camera will be capable of. Again, with any of these modes, you're not able to change the quality of the format to the RAW format. Everything is as a JPEG and everything will be minimally able to be edited as a result. Is everything okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the other mode that we have available to us is the flash off. The camera will do settings with the flash off. We'll take photos with the flash off. Okay, why don't we stop there? Alright, so now I've shown you basically the full auto modes, the different settings that are available to us. And as you can tell by the brevity of my lesson on that, there really isn't much to do, there's not much you can change. You can just put the camera into those settings and use them, but your results are always going to be limited to what the camera thinks you were trying to achieve, or what the programmers at Canon thought would be best. So I'm going to start us off by moving us into what's called the creative zone. The creative zone is when you go from these areas into these areas of the control dial. We have P, TV, AV, M, and ADEP. In P mode, the camera still selects the aperture and the shutter speed for us, but we finally have the more advanced menu available to us. We can now do things such as auto exposure bracket, flash exposure compensation. We can change our white balance. We can change the quality of the file captured to RAW. We are now able to change the color space of the picture style that we're using. We can change the autofocus mode. We can set one shot where if we want the red light to come on to when we're focusing, or we can leave, sorry, that was wrong. We can do a single shot where if we want to hold down the shutter and one photo is taken, we can do continuous shooting where we hold it down and the camera will just keep taking as many shots as it can. We have a self timer of 2 seconds available to us as well. We also can change the metering mode from evaluative to partial metering, spot metering, or center weighted average. We are also able to change the exposure compensation based on what we want to do. We just hold down the AV and then we can change right there. Underexposed for 2 stops, 1 stop, overexposed for 1 or 2 stops. And of course, we can also control the ISO speed if we want to keep it at 100 to get the best quality from the image sensor. So that is the first step in switching over into creative. It's not really a large step, but you get the flexibility that you did not have previously when you were using the easy modes on the camera. Now, for a more advanced setting, you can choose the focus point that you want to have everything focused. Now, when you're in the full auto mode, this is what is really on the screen. Now, that means every point here can be used as a focus, but that means, again, the camera will choose what's closest to you. You can choose where the camera is focusing on any of these 9 spots. The center point is the most sensitive spot and will be the most accurate when you're focusing. When we're focusing using AI Servo, we're able to use the center focus point and track our target and continue to take shots. And that is how some sports shooting is achieved. Now, we wouldn't recommend using the P mode because you will not have control over how quick the shutter speed is at that point. And you still don't have a lot of control over the aperture or anything like that. And aperture is important because it is what controls depth of field. If you want an item to be in focus and the background behind it to be blurred out, you need to have a wide aperture. And